Jack Morris had exactly $23 left until payday. That money was supposed to buy milk and bread for his kids. But when he saw the disabled boy sitting alone at the diner counter, something in his heart shifted. Without hesitation, he spent his last dollars buying the boy a warm meal. What Jack didn't know was that the quiet woman in the corner booth watching everything was the boy's mother, one of the wealthiest people in the city. She had been testing people's reactions to her son for weeks, and Jack was the first person who helped without knowing who they were. His simple act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. But just how far would this billionaire go to repay a struggling father's compassion? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The screen door creaked as Jack entered the small rental house he called home, his footsteps heavy on the worn linoleum. In the dim light of the kitchen, he pulled out the stack of bills from his jacket pocket, their edges softened from being handled so often. Cable disconnection notice, past due electric, and Sarah's medical bills from last year. He spread them across the kitchen table like a deck of cards dealt by a particularly cruel dealer. "Daddy!" 8-year-old Emma's voice, carried from the living room, followed by the quick padding of small feet. Her brother Tommy, 2 years older, wasn't far behind. Jack quickly gathered the bills and tucked them into the drawer beneath the microwave, his makeshift filing system for things he didn't want his children to worry about. "Hey, Princess! Hey, buddy! How was school today?" Emma launched herself into his arms, her dark curls, so much like her mother's, tickling his chin. "I got a gold star in math, and Mrs. Peterson says I can be in the school play." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Jack hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of the drugstore shampoo they could barely afford. "Tommy, how about you?" Tommy hung back slightly, his face carrying that serious expression that made him look too much like an adult. "It was okay. But Dad, they're asking for money for the field trip again." Jack's heart sank. The permission slip had been sitting in his workspace for days, mocking him with its $30 fee. "We'll figure something out, bud. Promise." Later that night, after mac and cheese dinner and bedtime stories, Jack sat at the kitchen table with his ledger, a habit Sarah had instilled in him before everything changed. The numbers didn't lie. Even with 3 jobs, morning shift at the warehouse, afternoon maintenance work, and weekend landscaping, they were barely treading water. His fingers traced over Sarah's photograph, tucked into the ledger's cover. 2 years had passed since the cancer took her, but the financial aftermath was still drowning them. The medical bills had eaten through their savings, their insurance, and eventually their dignity. Now every month was a juggling act between necessities and debt collectors. The $23 he'd spent at the diner earlier that day had been earmarked for groceries. But seeing that boy, sitting alone at the counter with his crutches propped nearby, something in Jack had snapped. He couldn't walk past another person in need, not when he knew too well what it felt like to be overlooked. The kitchen clock ticked. Past midnight, in 5 hours, he'd need to be at the warehouse, stacking boxes until his back ached. Then to the office building downtown, fixing whatever needed fixing. The weekend would bring the endless rhythm of mowing lawns in the better neighborhoods, where people like him were invisible, except when something needed doing. A soft sound from the hallway caught his attention. Tommy stood there in his 2 small pajamas, looking lost. "Can't sleep, buddy?" Tommy shook his head. "I heard you counting again." Jack pushed out a chair, and Tommy climbed into it, his eyes finding the photograph in the ledger. "Mom would know what to do, wouldn't she?" "Your mom," Jack's voice caught. "Your mom would tell us to keep going one day at a time. That's all anyone can do." "I could quit the baseball team," Tommy offered, his voice small. "To save money." "No." Jack's response was firm. "We don't quit the things we love. We'll find a way." But as he held his son, Jack wondered how many more ways there were to find. The bills kept coming. The jobs barely covered the basics, and his children deserved so much more than a father who could only promise better days ahead. What he didn't know was that across town, in a penthouse overlooking the city, a woman sat at her own table, thinking about the man in the diner who had given his last dollars to help her son, and she was about to set in motion events that would change everything. Rebecca Chen stood at her penthouse window, absently turning the diamond-studded watch on her wrist. The timepiece had been a gift from her late husband James, his last anniversary present before the accident. Its value could probably feed a family for a year, she realized, thinking of the man from the diner. The thought made her uncomfortable in a way that her wealth rarely did anymore. "Ms. Chen," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Michael's therapist is here. Send them in." Rebecca took a deep breath, straightening her posture. The mask of the confident CEO slipped back into place, though her mind kept drifting to the scene she'd witnessed earlier. Michael sat in his wheelchair by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city below. At 13, he was already showing signs of his father's thoughtful nature, though the cerebral palsy had taken so much else from him. The therapist worked with him quietly, and Rebecca found herself studying her son's face, the same face that hundreds of people had walked past in that diner, averting their eyes or offering hollow smiles, all except one. "He did very well today," the therapist said afterward, packing up her equipment. "The new exercises are showing promise." Rebecca nodded, but her attention was on Michael's expression. He seemed lighter, the same way he'd looked after that stranger had sat with him at the diner counter, treating him not with pity or discomfort, but with simple human dignity. After the therapist left, Rebecca settled beside her son. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "I liked him," Michael said softly, his words carefully formed. "The man at the diner." Rebecca's hand went to her watch again, a nervous habit she'd developed since James's death. "I know you did. He didn't look at me like I was broken." The words struck her heart. For 3 weeks, they'd conducted their little experiment, visiting different diners, coffee shops, and restaurants across the city. Rebecca would settle into a distant corner, watching as her son sat alone. She'd wanted to understand how people really behaved when they didn't know they were in the presence of the CEO of Chen Technologies. The results had been depressingly predictable. Stares, whispers, occasional offers of help that felt more about the helper's ego than her son's needs. Until today. She pulled out her tablet, opening the preliminary background report on Jack Morris. 3 jobs, 2 children, widowed, medical debt from his wife's cancer treatment, the familiar statistics of struggle painted in cold data points. But numbers couldn't capture what she'd witnessed, a man who had nothing giving everything. "Mom," Michael's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Can we go back to the diner?" He nodded, the movement requiring visible effort. "I want to thank him." Rebecca touched her son's cheek, remembering another conversation from long ago. James had been alive then, both of them reeling from Michael's diagnosis. "Money doesn't solve everything," he told her. "Sometimes it just builds higher walls." She'd forgotten that wisdom somewhere along the way, retreating behind those walls after James's death. Her success in the tech industry had made it easy to distance herself from the world that had often been cruel to her son. But today, those walls had shown their first crack. Looking down at her watch, this symbol of wealth that somehow felt heavier today, Rebecca made a decision. "Actually, sweetheart, I have a better idea." She pressed the intercom. "Sarah, get me everything you can on Jack Morris's employment history. And contact HR. We're going to have an opening in the Community Outreach Division." "Right away, Miss Chen. Oh, and the board members are asking about next week's charity gala." Rebecca looked at her son, saw the hope in his eyes, and felt something shift in her own perspective. "Tell them there's going to be a change of focus this year." As she turned back to the city lights below, her fingers finally stilled on her watch. Perhaps it was time to stop measuring life in dollars and cents, in stock prices and profit margins. Perhaps it was time to remember what James had always known, that true value couldn't be counted in carats or commas. It was counted in moments of genuine kindness, offered without expectation of return. The refrigerator door was a gallery of Emma's artwork, held up by mismatched magnets from local businesses. Jack paused in his morning rush to study her latest creation, a crayon drawing divided neatly into two sections. On the left, 4 smiling stick figures stood hand in hand. On the right, only 3 remained, the 4th figure floating above with angel wings. Before and after, Tommy had whispered when Emma first pinned it up, his young voice heavy with understanding beyond his ears. Jack forced himself to look away, focusing instead on packing lunches with what little remained in the pantry. Half a peanut butter sandwich each, an apple split between them. The last handful of dollar store crackers divided into paper napkins. "Daddy?" Emma appeared in her school uniform, already wrinkled despite his best efforts with the iron. "Can I take my drawing to show and tell today?" His hands stilled over the lunch bags. "Which drawing, Princess?" "The one of our family. Mrs. Peterson says we should share things that are important to us." Jack's throat tightened. He turned to find Tommy in the doorway, shaking his head slightly behind his sister's back. Even at 10, he was already trying to protect both his father and his sister from pain. "How about we pick another one?" Jack suggested gently. "Maybe the one you drew of the park." The old station wagon protested as Jack turned the key, the engine coughing twice before catching. He'd been nursing it along for months, knowing they were one major repair away from disaster. The children settled into their usual spots. Tommy with his worn backpack, Emma clutching her folder of drawings minus the one from the refrigerator. "Remember, Grandma Rose is picking you up today," Jack reminded them, navigating through early morning traffic. "I've got the landscaping job after the warehouse. Can't you come home early?" Emma's voice was small. "Just once?" The question hit like a physical blow. "I wish I could, sweetheart. But we talked about this, remember? Daddy has to work extra hard right now. To make up for the money the doctors took," Tommy added matter-of-factly, making Jack wince. The school drop-off line moved slowly, giving Jack unwanted time to study the other parents in their newer cars, their pressed business attire. A minivan ahead of them had a "My child is an honor student" sticker next to one advertising a local country club. "Dad?" Tommy's voice pulled him back. "I didn't want to say anything, but the baseball team is getting new uniforms." Jack's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "How much?" $40. Coach says we need them by next week." Another bill, another requirement, another reminder of how he was failing them. The $23 he'd spent at the diner. Yesterday could have gone toward it. But no, he couldn't bring himself to regret that choice. "I'll figure something out," he promised, the words feeling hollow from overuse. The children's goodbye hugs were quick, practiced things. As they disappeared into the building, Jack noticed Emma had left one of her drawings on the seat. This one showed their house, but bigger, with a garden and what looked like a dog in the yard. "Our future home," she'd written across the top in careful letters. He was late to the warehouse after the school run, earning a warning look from his supervisor. For 6 hours, he loaded and unloaded boxes, his body moving on autopilot, while his mind calculated and recalculated numbers that never added up. During his lunch break, if you could call 5 minutes between shifts a break, his phone buzzed with a text from his landlord. Rent would be going up next month. Market rates, the message explained impersonally, as if that made it any easier to absorb. The car made it to his afternoon maintenance job, but the ominous knocking from the engine had grown louder. Every red light was a prayer that it would start moving again. Every mile was borrowed time. By late afternoon, exhaustion had settled into his bones, but there was no rest in sight. The landscaping job waited. 3 more lawns to mow in the prestigious Heights neighborhood, where houses had more bathrooms than his entire rental home had rooms. As he unloaded his rusty mower from the car, a sleek SUV pulled into one of the driveways. A boy about Tommy's age emerged, carrying a baseball bat. That probably cost more than Jack made in a week. He thought of Tommy's uniform fee, of Emma's drawings, of the growing stack of bills in the microwave drawer. The weight of it all pressed down until it was hard to breathe. But the sun was setting, and the grass wouldn't mow itself. Jack pulled the starter cord, letting the mower's drone drown out everything else. One more hour, one more lawn, one more day of keeping his head above water. Barely. Rebecca's private office was silent, except for the soft hum of her computer. On her screen, articles about Jack Morris filled a dozen open tabs. But it was the old newspaper clipping on her desk that kept drawing her attention, its edges yellow. With age, the headline stark against the faded paper, "Tech pioneer James Chen dies in private plane crash, leaving behind revolutionary legacy." She'd stopped reading the article years ago, but certain phrases still jumped out. Survived by wife Rebecca and son Michael, charitable foundations. Commitment to ethical business practices. The words painted a picture of James that felt both true and incomplete, like trying to capture the ocean in a photograph. "Ms. Chen?" Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "I have that background check on Mr. Morris you requested." "Send it through." The file appeared on her screen. Jack Morris's life reduced to data points and documentation. Employment. History. Steady until his wife's illness. Credit score. Once excellent, now devastated by medical debt. Mortgage foreclosure after the cancer treatments failed. Current residence. A rental in a neighborhood that made Rebecca's security team uncomfortable. But it was the smaller details that caught her attention. Regular volunteer work at his children's school, despite working 3 jobs. Perfect attendance at his son's baseball games, even when it meant losing sleep between shifts. Small donations. To the cancer ward where his wife had died, even when he could barely afford groceries. "I've also found something else you should see," her assistant added. About his wife's final days at St. Mary's Hospital. Rebecca opened the new file, and her breath caught. The hospital's billing records showed the full story, how Jack and Sarah Morris had been caught in the maze of insurance denials and mounting costs. How they'd sold their house, emptied their savings, and still ended up drowning in debt. The same hospital where James had ensured Michael would always receive the best care, free of charge. The irony wasn't lost on Rebecca. Her fingerprints were probably on some of the technology that had kept Sarah Morris alive those final months. Chen Technologies' medical division had revolutionized cancer treatment for those who could afford it. She pulled up the video feed from the diner again, watching Jack's interaction with Michael for the 10th time. The gentleness in his movements, the natural way he engaged with her son. Not a hint of the condescension or discomfort she'd grown used to seeing. "Your father would have liked him," Michael had said this morning over breakfast. Her son's insight, though sometimes slow in coming, was usually piercing in its accuracy. Rebecca's hands went to the newspaper article, but instead of her husband's photograph, she found herself staring at the quote they'd used from his last interview. "Technology without humanity is just expensive noise." The words struck her differently now. James had built Chen Technologies on the principle that innovation should serve people, not the other way around. Somewhere along the way, after his death, she'd lost sight of that vision. The company had become about market share and profit margins, its charitable work more about tax benefits than actual impact. She opened another file, the latest proposal for the company's annual charity gala, the usual performative philanthropy, wealthy donors writing checks to feel good about themselves, publicity photos with oversized cardboard donations, press releases about corporate responsibility. "What would you do?" she whispered to James's memory. But she already knew he would have seen Jack Morris not as a charity case, but as an opportunity to restore something vital to both their families. Rebecca pressed the intercom. "Cancel my afternoon meetings and contact HR. I want to review all current openings in the company, especially in community outreach and charitable operations." "Yes, Ms. Chen. And about Mr. Morris's background check, there's one more thing. It seems his daughter's birthday's coming up next week." Rebecca looked at the newspaper article one last time before sliding it back into her desk drawer. Perhaps it was time to stop measuring herself against James's legacy and start building something new. Thank you. One more thing. Find out what time that diner opens tomorrow morning. I think it's time for a proper introduction. As she turned back to her computer, Rebecca felt a certainty she hadn't experienced since James's death. This wasn't just about helping one struggling father. It was about remembering who she was supposed to be, who they were supposed to be as a company. The charity gala could wait. Real change, she was beginning to remember, happened one person at a time. The termination notice came on cheap printer paper, the kind that felt brittle in Jack's hands. Due to budget restructuring, position no longer available. Effective immediately. The warehouse hadn't even waited until the end of his shift. Just called him into the office, handed him the notice, and watched him clean out his locker. He sat in the station wagon, staring at the paper until the words blurred. 1/3 of their income, gone in a single paragraph of corporate speak. The engine hadn't even cooled from his drive to work, and already he was leaving for the last time. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Morris, this is Sandra Williams from Chen Technologies." Jack frowned, certain it was a mistake. "I think you have the wrong number." "No mistake, Mr. Morris. We've been reviewing candidates for our new Community Relations Coordinator position, and your name came up rather prominently." He looked down at the termination notice again, wondering if exhaustion was making him hallucinate. "I haven't applied for any positions at Chen Technologies. Sometimes opportunities find us, Mr. Morris. Would you be available for an interview? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? The maintenance job started at 8, but they'd been cutting his hours anyway. Yes, I suppose I could be. Excellent. I'm sending the details to your phone now. Business casual is fine. We're more interested in substance than appearance here." The call ended before Jack could form a coherent response. Seconds later, his phone chimed with an email containing an address in the city's business district and a preliminary salary figure that made him blink hard, certain he was reading it wrong. He started the car, the engine's knock seemingly louder now that he couldn't afford to fix it. The maintenance job would have to understand. This opportunity, as impossible as it seemed, was too important to pass up. The children were still at Grandma Rose's when he got home. He should tell them about the warehouse, prepare them for more belt-tightening. But first, he needed to understand what was happening. Chen Technologies. Even he knew the name. Their logo was on half the medical equipment that had filled Sarah's hospital room. They were the kind of company that hired people with degrees and connections, not warehouse workers with a high school diploma and a stack of overdue bills. He pulled out his ancient laptop, the fan whirring protestingly as he searched for information about the company. The results were overwhelming. Global technology leader, revolutionary medical advances, billions in annual revenue. Their headquarters downtown looked like something from a science fiction movie. A new email notification popped up. The official interview confirmation, followed by another with preliminary paperwork. The position description read like a dream. Coordinating community outreach programs, managing charitable initiatives, serving as a liaison between the company and local organizations. The salary wasn't a typo. Jack's hands shook as he started filling out the forms. Employment history. He listed the warehouse, trying to make loading dock supervisor sound more impressive than it was. The maintenance job, the landscaping work. Previous experience with community service. He hesitated, then listed his volunteer work at the children's school, the cancer support group he'd helped organize after Sarah's death. The termination notice sat on the table beside him, a reminder of how quickly things could fall apart. But maybe, just maybe, it was also a sign that they could come together. His phone buzzed again. Grandma rose. "Jack, the kids are asking when you're coming. Emma wants to show you her new drawing. I'll be right there." He looked at the interview confirmation one more time. "Actually, could you tell them I have some good news?" "About time, dear. About time." As he drove to pick up his children, The termination notice folded in his pocket. Jack allowed himself to feel something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. It was tentative, fragile, but it was there. What he didn't know was that across town, Rebecca Chen was reviewing his hastily completed application forms, a small smile playing at her lips as she read his earnest descriptions of community service. Squeezed in between multiple jobs, sometimes the best candidates were the ones who didn't know they were being chosen. The Chen Technologies lobby made Jack acutely aware of his second-best suit, the one he kept for parent-teacher conferences and court appearances with debt collectors. Everything gleamed, the marble floors, the steel sculptures, the vast windows that seemed to touch the sky. Even the air felt expensive. "Mr. Morris?" A young woman in a crisp blazer approached. "I'm Sandra. We spoke on the phone. Please follow me." The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent, except for the soft classical music playing overhead. Jack's reflection in the polished doors showed every wrinkle in his dress shirt, every scuff on his worn dress shoes. The salary figure from the job listing floated in his mind. Enough to pay off Sarah's medical bills in 2 years, enough to move the kids to a better school district, enough to stop counting pennies at the grocery store. It felt impossible. Sandra led him through a maze of glass-walled offices to a corner suite. "Miss Chen will see you now." Jack's step faltered. "Miss Chen, as in Rebecca Chen?" "Yes, our CEO handles some interviews personally." The office door opened before Jack could process this information. And there she was, the woman from the diner. She sat behind a massive desk, but Jack would have recognized her anywhere. The quiet observer, who had watched him share a meal with her son, was now studying him with the same intensity. "Mr. Morris, please have a seat." Jack's legs moved, automatically, carrying him to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. His eyes landed on a framed photograph beside her computer, a family portrait. A younger Rebecca stood with a handsome man and a small boy, all of them laughing at something outside the frame. The boy was Michael, before whatever had put him in the wheelchair. The man must be his father. "I believe we have a mutual acquaintance," Rebecca said, her voice carefully neutral. "Your son," Jack managed. "At the diner." She nodded, her fingers brushing the edge of the photograph. "Michael speaks very highly of you." "I didn't know. I just saw someone who needed—" "Exactly." Rebecca leaned forward. "You saw someone who needed kindness, and you offered it without hesitation, even though you could barely afford to do so." The air left Jack's lungs. "You know about my situation. I know you're a single father working multiple jobs to support your children. I know you lost your wife to cancer 2 years ago. I know you volunteer at your children's school despite having almost no free time. And I know you were terminated from your warehouse position yesterday." Jack's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. "Is this some kind of— I don't understand what I'm doing here." Rebecca stood, moving to a window that overlooked the city. "My husband died 4 years ago, a plane crash. The company was everything to him, but not in the way most people thought. James believed technology should serve humanity, not the other way around." She turned back to face him. "Our community relations position isn't a charity offer, Mr. Morris. It's an opportunity to help us remember what this company is supposed to stand for. But I don't have the qualifications." "You have exactly the qualifications we need." She returned to her desk, touching the family photograph again. "You understand struggle. You understand community. You understand what it means to help others, even when you have nothing to give but kindness." Jack looked at the photograph, seeing it differently now. Not just a wealthy family's portrait, but a moment preserved before loss changed everything. Like his own family photos, divided into before and after. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Because in that diner, you didn't see a disabled boy or a charity case. You saw my son as a person. Do you know how rare that is in our world, Mr. Morris?" She pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk. "This is a formal offer letter full benefits, including retroactive health insurance that would cover your previous medical bills, a salary that reflects the importance we place on this position, and a start date of next Monday if you accept. Jack's hands shook as he opened the folder. The numbers were real. The opportunity was real. "I don't want your pity," he said quietly. "Good." Rebecca's voice was firm, "because this isn't pity. This is recognition of what we need and what you can provide. The question is, Mr. Morris, are you ready to help us change lives beyond just my sons?" The family photograph seemed to watch him as he looked at the offer letter. In it, Rebecca's family was whole, untouched by tragedy, just like his own family. In Emma's drawings of before, but maybe after didn't have to mean only loss. Maybe sometimes it could mean new beginnings. The physical therapy room in the Chen residence looked more like a small hospital wing. Parallel bars, resistance bands, and specialized equipment lined the walls, each piece worth more than Jack's car. Michael worked with focused determination on a mobility device that seemed straight out of science fiction, the kind of technology that could change lives if people could afford it. "Dad, look!" Emma's voice echoed through the room as she demonstrated a stretch she'd learned from Michael's therapist. Tommy sat nearby, helping Michael with a hand exercise, their heads bent together over a game of thumb war. It had been Rebecca's idea to have Jack bring his children to the house, to help everyone adjust to their new circumstances. "They need to understand this isn't charity," she'd said. "It's about building connections." But watching his children interact with the equipment that represented everything he couldn't provide for them made Jack's chest tight with familiar inadequacy. "It's hard, isn't it?" Rebecca's voice came from behind him. "Accepting help." Jack turned to find her watching Michael and Tommy, her expression soft. "I keep waiting for the catch. There isn't one, unless you count having to put up with my company at charity board meetings." A ghost of a smile crossed Jack's face. "I meant more fundamental catches, the kind that come with suddenly jumping social classes." "Ah." Rebecca moved to adjust one of Michael's resistance bands. "You think this is about social classes? Isn't it? Look at this room. Look at what you can provide." "I was looking at what you've already provided." She nodded toward their children. Tommy was now showing Michael a baseball grip, while Emma attempted to teach them both a clapping game. "My son hasn't smiled this much in years." Michael's therapy equipment hummed softly in the background, a reminder of the vast gulf between their worlds. But the sound of children's laughter seemed to bridge it, if only temporarily. "When James died," Rebecca continued, her voice low, "everyone wanted to help, but their help came with expectations, social obligations, political maneuvering. It was never just help." Jack thought of the casseroles and sympathy cards that had poured in after Sarah's death, dwindling as the months of her illness stretched on and the medical bills mounted. "People get tired of helping when it starts to cost them something. But you didn't." She met his eyes. "In that diner, helping Michael cost you everything you had left. And you did it anyway." Before Jack could respond, Michael called out, "Mom, Tommy's teaching me baseball." Rebecca's face lit up at her son's excitement. "Is he now? Dad says I could come to his game." Jack felt a moment of panic. Tommy's team still needed that uniform fee, but Rebecca was already nodding. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Maybe we could all go." The children's enthusiasm filled the room, drowning out the hum of medical equipment. Jack watched as Tommy carefully showed Michael how to hold a baseball, adjusting his grip with the same gentle patience Jack had once shown him. "Your son," Rebecca said quietly, "he has a gift for this, for seeing the person, not the disability. He gets that from his mother." Jack's voice caught. "Sarah was a special education teacher before everything happened." Understanding flickered across Rebecca's face. She moved to a cabinet and returned with a photo album. Michael's father was the same way. "Look." The album showed James Chen in various settings, not the polished tech CEO from news photos, but a man playing with his son, working with therapy equipment, laughing despite the challenges. The last photo showed him helping Michael into a baseball uniform. His first and only game, Rebecca explained. James was determined to make it happen, even when others said it was impossible. Jack looked at the photo, then at their children, still practicing baseball grips. Tommy's team is getting new uniforms next week. I know. When Jack raised an eyebrow, she added, background check, remember? The fee is due Friday. I can handle it, Jack said automatically. Rebecca's response surprised him. I know you can. Just like I can handle Michael's therapy alone. But maybe neither of us has to. The therapy equipment continued its steady hum, but it no longer seemed like a barrier between their worlds. Instead, it was just background noise to the sound of their children's laughter, a sound that didn't care about bank accounts or social classes. Mom, Emma called. Can we show Michael the clapping game again? Rebecca smiled at Jack. Shall we? For the first time since walking into the therapy room, Jack felt his shoulders relax. Yeah, he said. I think we shall. The keys felt impossibly heavy in Jack's hand. 3 shiny brass pieces on a Chen Technologies keychain. House key, garage door, security system. He stood in front of the modest but well-maintained 3-bedroom home in a neighborhood he'd once mowed lawns in, his children frozen beside him on the front walk. Is it really ours? Emma whispered, clutching her backpack of treasures. The only thing she'd insisted on carrying herself during the move. It's a rental, Jack reminded her gently. But yes, it's our home now. Tommy stepped forward, running his hand along the porch railing. No more creaky stairs? No more creaky anything. Jack inserted the key into the lock. Its smooth turn, so different from the janky tumbler of their old place. Ready? The inside was already partially furnished. Rebecca's doing, though she'd been careful to let them bring their own personal items to make it feel like theirs. The living room furniture was simple but new. The kitchen gleamed with appliances that all matched and actually worked. Daddy! Emma's voice echoed from upstairs. I have a whole room to myself. Jack followed the sound of his children exploring, each exclamation of discovery both warming his heart and pinching it with the awareness of how little they'd had before. Tommy stood in his new room, staring at the desk by the window. A proper study space, not the kitchen table corner he'd been using for homework. Dad? Tommy's voice was uncertain. What if we can't stay? The question hit Jack in the gut. Of course his son would worry about that. They'd lost their first home during Sarah's illness, had to downsize twice more as the bills mounted. This is different, buddy. Jack sat on the bed, a new twin set with a baseball-themed comforter. I have a good job now. We're going to be okay. But what if... Hey! Jack pulled the new house keys from his pocket. See these? They're not just keys. They're a promise from me to you and Emma. We're not losing this one. A horn sounded outside, the moving truck with the rest of their belongings. Not that they had much. Most of their furniture had been too worn to bring, and Rebecca had insisted they needed a fresh start. Jack had fought her on it initially, but she'd worn him down with practical arguments about cost-effectiveness and the children's needs. As they directed the movers with their few boxes of personal items, a sleek car pulled up to the curb. Rebecca emerged with Michael in his wheelchair. We thought you might want help unpacking, she said, but her eyes were on the children. And Michael mentioned something about christening the backyard with a baseball game. Tommy's face lit up. They'd been practicing adaptive baseball techniques with Michael over the past week, and the boys had developed their own modified rule system. Can we, Dad? Jack nodded, watching as Tommy carefully helped Michael navigate the wheelchair down the gentle slope of the front yard path. Another feature Rebecca had insisted was just good universal design when she'd shown him the house. Listing. The furniture arrived on schedule? Rebecca asked, following Jack inside. It's perfect, too perfect. Rebecca, this is part of your compensation package. She cut him off smoothly. Standard relocation assistance for all executive team members. You're the Director of Community Relations and Charitable Initiatives. That's an executive position. Her tone brooked no argument. Besides, the board was quite impressed with your proposal for restructuring our charitable giving programs. Jack had to admit the introduction to the board had gone better than he'd expected. His experiences, both giving and receiving help, had given him insights that resonated with them. The idea of focusing on sustainable assistance rather than one-time donations had particularly caught their attention. Still, he gestured at the house, this level of... Jack, Rebecca's voice softened. My son is playing baseball in your backyard. Michael, who hasn't wanted to do anything athletic since James died, is excited about sports. Do you know what that's worth to me? Through the kitchen window, they could see Tommy showing Michael how to hold a plastic bat modified with Rebecca's. Tech division sensors to help with grip and timing. Emma was running to retrieve balls, her laughter carrying through the open window. Now, Rebecca continued briskly, I believe there are boxes to unpack, and I have it on good authority that Emma's room needs proper organization of her art supplies. Jack looked down at the keys in his hand, no longer a weight, but an anchor. Thank you, he said simply. Rebecca smiled. Welcome home, Mr. Morris. Now, shall we rescue the movers from Emma's very specific ideas about where her stuffed animal should go? The corporate ID badge hanging from Jack's neck felt like it belonged to someone else. The photo showed him in his new suit. Rebecca's insistence, though he'd managed to talk her down from her original tailor to a department store, smiling uncertainly at the camera. Jack Morris, Director of Community Relations and Charitable Initiatives, it proclaimed in authoritative text beneath the Chen Technologies logo. Mr. Morris? His new assistant, Karen, appeared at his office door. His office, the phrase still felt foreign. The budget committee is waiting in conference room A. Jack straightened his tie, gathered his presentation materials, and tried to ignore the whispers that followed him down the hallway. They weren't exactly subtle about it. Warehouse worker, Chen's latest charity case, Believe. She actually put him on the executive team. The conference room fell silent as he entered. 12 faces turned to study him, their expressions ranging from polite disinterest to barely concealed disdain. Jack recognized several of them from news photos and company bulletins, people who controlled billions in corporate spending. Good morning, he began, his voice steadier than he felt. I believe you've all received my proposal for restructuring the charitable giving program. Yes, drawled Marcus Wheeler, head of finance. Your interesting suggestions about resource allocation. The emphasis made it clear exactly what he thought of those suggestions. Jack had proposed shifting from large, publicity-friendly donations to more targeted, sustainable community support programs. The current system, Jack continued, clicking to his first slide, treats charity as a transaction. We give money, we get tax write-offs and good publicity. But what if we treated it as an investment instead? An investment in what exactly? Wheeler's tone suggested he was humoring a child. Jack thought of Michael and Tommy in the backyard, of Emma's art now hanging in a real bedroom, of the keys in his pocket that represented stability he'd thought forever lost. In potential, he clicked to the next slide, photos of real people his research had uncovered. This is Maria Hernandez, single mother of 3, working as a janitor in one of our buildings. Her daughter's a math prodigy, but they can't afford the special programs she needs. This is David Chen, no relation, who lost his small business during COVID, but has an innovative idea for community senior care. The room shifted slightly. These weren't nameless statistics anymore. Traditional corporate giving would write them checks, get a nice photo op, and move on. I'm proposing we invest in their futures, mentorship programs, educational support, small business incubation, the kind of help that multiplies itself. And the cost. Wheeler's voice had lost some of its condescension. Actually, less than our current program, because we're cutting out the middlemen and administrative bloat. Jack clicked to his budget breakdown. I've had some experience stretching limited resources. A few smiles at that, the first genuine ones he'd seen. But the PR value, someone began. Will be better, Jack interrupted, because instead of one-day headlines about donation amounts, we'll have ongoing stories of real change. People love numbers, but they connect with stories. He thought of his own story, of how a simple meal shared with a disabled boy had led to this moment. His hand went to his ID badge, touching it like a talisman. I'm not here because I understand corporate philanthropy, he said honestly. I'm here because I understand both sides of it. I know what it's like to need help, to give help even when you can barely afford to, and to watch help dry up when it's needed most. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Janet Chen, Rebecca's cousin and head of legal, spoke up. Walk us through the implementation timeline. By the time Jack left the conference room 2 hours later, he had provisional approval for a pilot program. His ID badge caught the light as he walked back to his office, and this time the whispers seemed different. Actually makes sense. Fresh perspective. Might be exactly what we needed. Karen met him at his office with a stack of messages. Ms. Chen called twice, and Mr. Wheeler wants to schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss expansion possibilities. Jack sat at his desk, still strange to think of it as his, and looked at the photos he'd placed there. His children in their new home, Sarah smiling from before her illness, a recent one of Tommy teaching Michael to pitch. The ID badge no longer felt like it belonged to someone else. Perhaps it had always been waiting for exactly who he was. The manila envelope arrived at his office unmarked, but Jack recognized the return address immediately. Midwest Medical Collections. Inside, familiar papers spilled across his desk. Medical bills from Sarah's final months, each one stamped with increasingly urgent notices, but it was the letter on top that made his blood run cold. Despite previous attempts to contact you regarding outstanding debts, legal action pending, wage garnishment proceedings, the amounts listed made his head spin. They'd found him, of course they had. His new position at Chen Technologies was public record now, his salary discoverable. The stable life he'd been building suddenly felt like a house of cards. A knock at his door made him hastily sweep the papers into a drawer. Come in. Rebecca entered, then paused, studying his face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just some old paperwork. He tried to smile, but she wasn't fooled. Jack. She closed the door behind her. What's wrong? His hand went to the drawer automatically, protective. Nothing I can't handle. Like you handled it before? By giving everything you had until there was nothing left? The gentle rebuke in her voice made him wince. She moved closer, and he found himself pulling out the collection notice, watching as she read it with increasingly narrowed eyes. These bills, they're from Sarah's treatment? He nodded. The insurance denied most of the experimental procedures. We appealed, but he gestured helplessly at the papers. By the end, we were just trying to keep her comfortable. I signed whatever they put in front of me. Rebecca was already reaching for her phone. I'll have legal look into... No. Jack's voice was firm. This is my responsibility. Your responsibility? She set the phone down harder than necessary. Like Michael was your responsibility at the diner? Like Tommy's baseball uniform was yours alone to worry about? That's different. How? She leaned forward, her expression intense. Tell me exactly how it's different. Jack struggled to find the words. These debts, they're all I have left of her. The last thing I can do for her. Understanding softened Rebecca's face. Oh, Jack. She sat in one of his visitor chairs. James used to say that grief makes us hold on to the strangest anchors. Your husband sounds like he was a wise man. He was. And he would tell you, as I'm telling you now, that your wife wouldn't want these bills to be her legacy. Jack looked at the collection notice again, seeing not just numbers, but memories. Sarah in the hospital trying to smile through the pain, the way she'd worried more about their finances than her own comfort. Her last coherent words. Promise me they'll be okay. The company has a legal team for a reason. Rebecca continued quietly. Let them review the bills. If the insurance denials were improper, and they often are, we can fight them. If not, she paused. There are other options. I won't take charity. Good Lord, you're stubborn. But there was affection in her exasperation. Fine. Consider it a corporate initiative. We'll review predatory medical debt as part of our new community program. You can be the test case. Rebecca! Jack. She stood, gathering the scattered papers with careful hands. You told the budget committee that real help means investing in potential, that it's not about one-time fixes, but creating sustainable change. She set the stack on his desk. Were you lying? Of course not. Then stop acting like accepting help diminishes you. You're changing how this company approaches charity. Let us change how you approach accepting it. A message popped up on his computer. Tommy's baseball team was in the playoffs. His son was thriving in his new school. Emma's art was winning competitions. And for the first time in years, he wasn't counting every penny at the grocery store. Sarah would want that to be her legacy. Okay, he said finally, but I want to be involved. If we're going to help others with medical debt, I need to understand exactly how we do it. Rebecca smiled. I thought you might say that. Legal's already drafting proposals for a medical debt forgiveness program. They could use someone with personal experience. The collection notice still felt heavy, but differently now. Not an anchor dragging him down, but maybe a foundation to build something new. Sarah would like that, he said softly. Using what happened to help others. Yes, Rebecca agreed. I think she would. The resignation letter sat unfinished on Jack's laptop screen, cursor blinking accusingly after, I hereby tender my... He'd started and deleted it 6 times already, but the morning's headlines kept pushing him back to it. Chen Technologies. CEO's charity case, running million-dollar programs. From diner to director, the suspicious rise of Jack Morris. Sources question relationship between Rebecca Chen and new hire. His office phone lit up again. Another reporter. They'd been calling all morning, ever since some intern had leaked details about his encounter with Michael at the diner and his subsequent hiring. Social media was having a field day with speculation about his relationship with Rebecca. The worst part wasn't the insinuations about himself. It was how they were affecting his children. Tommy had come home from baseball practice yesterday with a black eye, refusing to repeat what the other kids had said about their family's sudden rise in fortune. Emma's art teacher had pulled Jack aside at pickup, concerned about the dark themes, emerging in her usually bright drawings. A knock at his door made him quickly close the resignation draft. Rebecca entered without waiting for a response, brandishing a tablet. Have you seen what they're writing? Her voice was taut with anger. The implications they're making about I've seen. Jack's own tablet displayed a particularly vicious comment thread speculating about what services he must be providing to earn his position. We need to respond. Legal's drafting a statement. I've drafted my own statement. He turned his laptop to show her the resignation letter. Rebecca's face went through several emotions before settling on fury. Absolutely not. It's the simplest solution. I leave, the speculation stops, the company's reputation. To hell with the company's reputation. The force of her outburst startled them both. She took a breath, visibly composing herself. You've done nothing wrong. We've done nothing wrong. Tell that to my kids. Jack's voice cracked. Tommy's fighting battles I didn't even know about. Emma's teacher thinks she needs counseling. And now, with these rumors about us, so we fight back. We show them, what? That the billionaire CEO and the warehouse worker just happened to form a completely professional relationship after she watched him buy her son a meal. That all of this, he gestured around his office, is purely merit-based. It is merit-based. Your programs are revolutionizing how we approach corporate philanthropy. The budget committee can't stop talking about the results. Wheeler actually smiled in a meeting yesterday. Despite everything, Jack almost laughed. At that, almost. None of that matters now. The narrative's already written. Poor guy catches rich woman's eye, gets cushy job, probably sleeping his way to the top. He pulled up another article. They're calling me a modern-day Cinderella story, but they don't mean it kindly. Rebecca's expression hardened. So you're just going to run? Let them win? What happened to the man who spent his last dollars helping a stranger? That man had nothing to lose. No! She moved closer, her voice intense. That man had everything to lose. Money for his children's food, and helped anyway. Where is he now? Jack's fingers traced the edges of his laptop, where the resignation letter waited. Maybe he was naive. Maybe he was brave. Rebecca sat in the chair across from him. Jack, do you know why I really hired you? He looked up, surprised by the question. Not because you helped Michael, though that showed me your character. I hired you because when you talked about community support programs, you understood something none of our highly paid consultants ever did. That real change happens person to person, story to story. She reached across the desk, closing his laptop. So tell me, what story do you want to tell your children? That when things got hard, their father ran away? Or that he stood his ground and showed them how to face adversity? The resignation letter was still there. One click away. The easy escape route. But Tommy's face flashed in his mind, bruised but unbowed, just like his father had taught him to be. What's your plan? He asked finally. Relief flickered across Rebecca's face. First, we control the narrative. No more hiding from the press. We tell our story our way. The truth about Michael's social experiment, about your hiring, about the impact you're making. And the rumors about us? A slight smile touched her lips. We show them something they don't expect. Two people who understand loss, trying to create something positive from it. The resignation letter remained unfinished on his laptop, but its hold on him was weakening. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe it was time to stop running from stories and start telling their own. Kindness versus cynicism. The real story behind Chen Technologies' viral hire. The headline dominated every major news site, accompanied by a photograph that Rebecca's PR team had somehow obtained from the diner's security cameras. It showed Jack sitting with Michael, both of them laughing over their meals, neither aware they were being watched. The timestamp confirmed it was taken moments before Jack had spent his last dollars on a stranger's happiness. The article opened with a question that cut straight to the heart. In a world where every act of kindness is questioned, every corporate decision scrutinized, what happens when genuine humanity collides with corporate America? Jack sat in his office, reading the piece for the 10th time. The reporter had done her job well, laying out the facts with careful precision. Michael's social experiment, designed by a mother trying to understand how the world really saw her. Disabled son. Jack's history of community service despite his own struggles. The statistical success of his new charitable initiatives at Chen Technologies. His phone buzzed with another message from Tommy. Dad, everybody's reading it at school. Even Coach Johnson shared it with the team. A soft knock preceded Emma's art teacher entering his office. She was clutching a new drawing, bright colors again, showing their family plus Michael and Rebecca at a baseball game. Mr. Morris, I wanted you to see this, and to apologize for my previous concerns. The media storm was shifting. Where there had been speculation, there was now verification. Where there had been cynicism, there was reluctant admiration. The story had struck a chord that resonated beyond corporate politics. Rebecca appeared in his doorway as the teacher left. Have you seen the response? Some of it. He gestured to his computer, though I'm trying not to read too many comments. Not the comments. This. She handed him her tablet, open to a social media thread that made his throat tight. People were sharing their own stories. A cashier who'd helped a struggling mother pay for baby formula. A bus driver who'd given his lunch to a homeless veteran. Small acts of kindness that usually went unnoticed, now being celebrated in the wake of their story. It's trending, Rebecca said softly. People are calling it the Derek's Last Dollar Challenge, doing something kind even when it costs you. The article had included that detail, the $23 that had been meant for his children's groceries. It could have made him look irresponsible. Instead, it had become a symbol of choosing compassion over calculation. Michael's trending too, she continued, her voice proud. Disability advocates are praising us for showing him as a person first, not a charity case. They want him to speak at their next conference. Jack smiled, remembering Michael's determination at yesterday's baseball practice with Tommy. The boy was coming out of his shell more each day. A new email notification popped up on his screen from Marcus Wheeler in finance. Jack opened it warily, but the message surprised him. Morris, my sister has a son with CP. Never told anyone at the geek company. Your story made me realize how much I've been hiding. Would like to discuss expanding the adaptive sports program. Lunch? The board's response has been overwhelming, Rebecca said, reading over his shoulder. They've unanimously approved the expansion of your community initiatives. Wheeler actually proposed increasing the budget. Jack shook his head in amazement. All because of a newspaper article? No. Rebecca's voice was firm. All because you showed them what real impact looks like. The article just made them pay attention. His office phone lit up again, another reporter. But this time, Jack didn't feel the urge to hide. You know what the best response has been? He said, reaching for the phone. Tommy's eye is healing, and the kid who hit him apologized. Said his mum cried reading about Sarah's medical bills. Made him understand what we'd been through. Rebecca smiled. Speaking of medical bills, legals found 3 major discrepancies in how the insurance company handled Sarah's case. They're not just fighting the collection agency. They're building a class action suit to help others in similar situations. The phone kept ringing, but Jack paused before answering. Did you ever imagine that morning in the diner would lead to all this? Actually, Rebecca's eyes were suspiciously bright. I imagined something even better. I just didn't know if it was possible anymore. Real change, person by person, story by story. Jack thought of the viral article, of the thousands of shares and responses, of lives being touched and perspectives being shifted. Ready to tell our story again? Rebecca asked as he reached for the phone. Jack looked at Emma's drawing, at Wheeler's email, at the headlines that had transformed from accusation to inspiration. Yeah, he said. I think I am. The joint press statement sat between them on Rebecca's desk, its carefully crafted paragraphs the result of hours of discussion, not with PR teams or corporate communications, just the two of them, finding the words to tell their truth. We stand together today, not as CEO and employee, but as parents who understand that real change begins with simple human connection. The press conference would start in 20 minutes. Through the office windows, they could see the media gathering in the company's main auditorium. But up here, in the quiet of Rebecca's office, they had a moment to breathe. Michael wants to come out with us, Rebecca said, adjusting her blazer for the 10th time. He says he's tired of being talked about instead of talked to. Jack smiled, thinking of how much the boy had grown in confidence. Tommy said the same. Thing asked if he could tell everyone about their baseball practices. Should we let them? The question hung in the air. Their children had been protected from the media circus so far, but maybe it was time to let them tell their own story. Sarah always said kids are stronger than we think, Jack mused, picking up the statement again. She let Tommy speak at her funeral, said he had a right to his grief, just like the rest of us. Rebecca nodded slowly. James would say the same thing. He never wanted Michael hidden away, even when it would have been easier. They looked down at the statement together, its formal language suddenly feeling inadequate. We could rewrite it, Jack suggested. Make it less corporate, more real. With 20 minutes to go. Why not? Isn't that how we got here? Making split-second decisions based on what feels right. Rebecca's laugh held a note of relief. Like buying a meal for a stranger. Like offering a job to that stranger. They bent over the paper together, crossing out carefully constructed phrases and replacing them with simple truths. The new version was shorter, more direct, and infinitely more powerful. A knock at the door announced Karen's arrival. They're ready for you, and the children are asking to come up. Jack and Rebecca exchanged looks. Send them up, they said in unison. Minutes later, Tommy and Michael were examining the statement while Emma added a last-minute drawing to the corner, a small family of stick figures holding hands. Can I really tell them about baseball? Michael asked, his speech careful but confident. And about our art club, Emma chimed in. She and Michael had started meeting weekly to draw together. This is your story too, Rebecca said softly. All of you. The final version of the statement was wrinkled, decorated with Emma's art, and marked with their collective revisions. It wasn't polished, it wasn't corporate, it was real. When they entered the auditorium together, not just Rebecca and Jack, but all of them, the press went silent for a moment. The sight of their blended group told a story no prepared statement could match. Rebecca stepped to the microphone first, but instead of reading from the paper, she simply gestured to their children. You've all written stories about us, she began, about motives and propriety and corporate responsibility, but the real story is sitting right here. It's about two families who found each other through an act of kindness. It's about children who don't see differences, only possibilities. And it's about what happens when we stop questioning every good thing and simply let it grow. Jack stepped forward next, Tommy's hand in his. You want to know if this is all real? Ask my son about teaching Michael to pitch. Ask Emma about their art sessions. Ask these kids what they've learned about friendship and family and looking beyond surface differences. The cameras flashed, but for once neither Jack nor Rebecca focused on them. Instead, they watched their children. Tommy helping Michael adjust his microphone, Emma showing her latest drawing to the front row reporters, all of them completely unself-conscious in their unity. The carefully prepared statement remained folded in Jack's pocket, replaced by something far more authentic, the simple truth of who they were and what they were building together. The charity proposal took up most of Jack's desk, its pages filled with marginalia from board members, legal advisors and financial analysts. But at its core was a simple idea, written in Jack's handwriting on the cover page: the Bridge Foundation. Because everyone deserves a chance to cross over. The medical debt program alone could help thousands, Rebecca said, highlighting key figures in the budget projection. Legals already identified 300 cases similar to Sarah's. Jack nodded, thinking of the families behind those numbers. And the Adaptive Sports Initiative? Michael's physical therapist is helping design it. She says the equipment we developed for his baseball training could be revolutionary for other kids. Rebecca smiled. Though she says Tommy's coaching techniques are equally important. The proposal represented everything they'd learned over the past months, transformed into actionable change. Debt forgiveness programs modeled on Jack's experience, adaptive sports based on Michael and Tommy's innovations, art therapy inspired by Emma's journey through grief, each piece born from their story, but reaching far beyond it. The board meeting's in an hour, Rebecca reminded him. Are you ready? Jack looked at the latest addition to his office wall. A framed collection of thank you letters from families they'd already helped through pilot programs. One stood out, written in crayon. Dear Mr. Morris, now my daddy can smile again too. More than ready, he answered. The boardroom was packed, not just with executives, but with people they'd invited to share their stories. Maria Hernandez and her math prodigy daughter, David Chen with his senior care innovation, parents of disabled children who joined Michael's growing baseball league. Jack stood to present, but instead of starting with figures and projections, he pointed to the people in the room. This is what sustainable change looks like, he began. Not numbers on a page, but lives transformed. When I first came to Chen Technologies, I thought I was the one being helped. Now I understand that help isn't a one-way street. It's a bridge. We build together. The presentation flowed naturally from there. Rebecca added technical details about implementation. Maria spoke about her daughter's accelerated program. David shared early success stories from his pilot project. Michael and Tommy did a joint presentation about adaptive sports that had several board members discreetly wiping their eyes. Wheeler, who'd become one of their strongest advocates, raised his hand during the funding discussion. The numbers are impressive, but what strikes me most is the return on investment. These aren't handouts, they're strategic interventions that create lasting change. Exactly, Jack agreed. Every person we help becomes part of helping others. Maria's daughter is already tutoring younger kids. David's senior care program employs people we helped retrain. It's an expanding circle of impact. Rebecca stepped forward. We're not just asking for funding, we're asking for commitment to a new way of thinking about corporate responsibility. The Bridge Foundation won't be a subsidiary of Chen Technologies. It will be an independent entity that can partner with other companies, multiply its impact. The discussion lasted hours, moving from finances to logistics to long-term vision. But when the final vote came, it was unanimous. The Bridge Foundation would become reality, with funding that made Jack's original budget look modest. After the board members filed out, Jack and Rebecca stayed behind, looking at the proposal that had started as a dream and would now become reality. You know what this means? Rebecca asked. We're going to need a bigger office. Jack laughed. We're going to need a lot of things. Staff, infrastructure, partnerships, hope. She added softly, we're going to give people hope. They gathered their materials, but paused at a noise from the doorway. Michael and Tommy had returned, excited about something. Dad, Tommy burst out, we figured out how to modify the pitching machine for kids with different abilities. Michael did the math. Mom, Michael added, his speech confident with excitement. Can we show the design team? Tommy thinks it could help lots of kids. Rebecca and Jack exchanged looks. This was what the foundation was really about, not just helping people cross bridges, but teaching them to build their own. The design team's going to love it, Rebecca assured them. In fact, why don't you present it yourselves? As they watched their sons head off together, already deep in discussion about their innovation, Jack thought about the proposal sitting in the boardroom. Its formal language and professional formatting couldn't fully capture what they were building. But maybe that was the point. Real change, like real life, couldn't be contained in documents and spreadsheets. It happened in moments like this. Two boys from different worlds working together to help others. Not because they had to, but because they couldn't imagine doing anything else. The diner receipt was creased and faded now, but the numbers were still legible. 2 meals, $23.47 total. Jack had found it in his old wallet while moving offices to the foundation's new building. Such a small amount to have changed so many lives. Daddy, look, our booth is empty. Emma's voice carried across the diner as their families walked in together. It was their first time back since that fateful day, and everything looked both exactly the same and completely different. The same worn leather seats, the same coffee-stained menus, the same gentle hum of conversation and clinking plates. But this time, when they sat down, all of them together, there was no pretense, no observation experiment, no last dollars being counted. Hard to believe it's been a year, Rebecca said, watching Michael and Tommy squeeze into one side of the booth together, already deep in conversation about their latest baseball modifications. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Jack replied. Sometimes it feels like another lifetime. The waitress approached, doing a double take as she recognized them from the news. But before she could say anything, Michael spoke up. Can I order? Oh, for everyone. His speech was stronger now, confidence building with each word. I remember what Mr. Morris ordered last time. Jack felt his throat tighten. He'd almost forgotten what he'd eaten that day, too focused on making sure Michael had a proper meal. The deluxe burger, Michael continued, with extra fries to share. Emma clapped. Can we share fries too? The waitress smiled, caught up in the moment. On the house, she started to say, but Rebecca held up a hand. No, please, let us pay. She met Jack's eyes. Some things are worth their full price. As they waited for their food, Jack pulled out the old receipt, showing it to the children. You know, in business terms, this was probably my best investment ever. Tommy studied the numbers. $23 to start a foundation. That's pretty good, Dad. Not just a foundation, Rebecca corrected gently. A family. The food arrived, and for a while they just enjoyed being together, sharing fries and stories and plans for the future. The foundation was growing faster than they'd imagined. Companies across the country were reaching out to replicate their programs. Lives were changing. "Remember when you thought you had to resign?" Rebecca asked quietly while the children argued. "About milkshake flavors," Jack nodded. "I thought I was protecting everyone. Turns out, sometimes protection means standing your ground instead of running away." "Speaking of standing your ground," she smiled, "Michael has a question for you. He's been practicing all week." Michael looked up at his mother's prompt, then turned to Jack with serious eyes. "Would you be on the Foundation's board with Mom, the adaptive sports program? Need someone who understands both sides of the bridge?" Jack finished for him, using their Foundation's metaphor. Michael nodded emphatically. Jack pretended to consider it, though his heart was already full. "Only if Tommy agrees to keep coaching the baseball program, and Emma keeps running the art therapy sessions." "Really?" Emma's eyes lit up. Her art club had become an unexpected success, helping children process grief and change through creativity. "Really?" Rebecca confirmed. "We want this to stay a family project, all of us building bridges together." The waitress returned with their check, and Jack reached for his wallet out of habit. But this time, instead of anxiety about the amount, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. That old receipt had marked the end of one chapter of his life, counting coins, juggling bills, trying to stay afloat. This new one marked something different: abundance, purpose, family. "I've got it," Rebecca said, reaching for the check. "How about we split it?" Jack countered. "Partners, remember?" They looked around the booth at their blended family. Tommy showing Michael a new pitching grip, Emma drawing on her placemat, all of them together in the place where it had started with a simple act of kindness. Jack carefully folded the old receipt and put it back in his wallet. Some things you keep not for their monetary value, but for their power to remind you of what matters most. "Same time next week?" Rebecca asked as they prepared to leave. Jack looked at their children, happy, healthy, whole, and thought about all the other families they were helping find their own bridges to a better future. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. "Some traditions are worth keeping." The business proposal for the Foundation's expansion filled 3 screens on Jack's office wall, each section highlighted with different colors for different initiatives. What had started as a local program was about to go national, and the scope of it took his breath away. "Medical Debt Forgiveness Program, Phase 2, read one header, followed by partnerships with 5 major hospital networks. Another showed Adaptive Sports Initiative, with Michael and Tommy's modified equipment already in production. The third displayed Community Bridge Builders, their newest program for identifying and supporting everyday acts of kindness. "Still can't believe this all started with a hamburger," Wheeler said, studying the projections. He'd become their strongest corporate ally, helping navigate the complex world of multi-state charitable operations. "It started with seeing people as people," Jack corrected, adjusting some figures on the community outreach budget. The hamburger was just the medium. Rebecca entered with Michael, who was dressed in a suit for his first official board presentation. His wheelchair had been upgraded with some of their new adaptive technology, allowing him smoother control and better posture support. "Ready?" she asked her son. Michael nodded, his tablet loaded with presentation slides he and Tommy had worked on for weeks. The sports program had 97 new sign-ups this month alone. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. What had begun as modified baseball practice between 2 boys had grown into a comprehensive, adaptive sports program, with Michael emerging as its most passionate advocate. "Tell them about the college scholarship program," Tommy burst in, appearing with Emma. Both children had started spending their after-school hours at the Foundation offices, homework spread across conference rooms while they helped with various projects. "That's supposed to be a surprise," Michael mock-scolded, but his grin gave him away. Jack looked at the proposal section marked Educational Initiatives. They'd discovered that many families facing medical debt had to sacrifice their children's education funds. The scholarship program would help bridge that gap, starting with 50 students next fall. Emma tugged at Jack's sleeve, pointing to her contribution to the presentation, artwork showing bridges connecting different communities, which had become the foundation's official logo. "The design team said it's perfect," she announced proudly. "They're using it for everything now." Rebecca moved to stand beside Jack, both of them watching their children prepare for the board meeting. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she asked softly. "What's that?" "They don't see it as charity work anymore. For them, it's just life, helping people, building bridges." She was right. Their children had internalized the Foundation's mission in the most natural way possible, by living it. Tommy didn't think twice about adapting sports equipment for kids with different abilities. Emma's art therapy sessions were just another way to make friends and share stories. Michael's growing confidence had transformed him from a recipient of help to a leader in providing it. The proposal's final section outlined their most ambitious plan yet, a national network of bridge builders, people who, like Jack had been, were out there helping others despite their own struggles. The foundation would identify them, support them, and help multiply their impact. "Mr. Morris?" Karen appeared at the door. "The board members are arriving, and there's something you should see first." She pulled up a video on the main screen. A compilation of stories from families they'd helped. A mother crying as her child's medical debt was forgiven. A disabled teenager hitting his first baseball using their adaptive equipment. A family moving into their first stable home after completing their financial literacy program. They all sent these in when they heard about the expansion proposal, Karen explained. They wanted the board to understand what the foundation really means. Jack felt Rebecca's hand slip into his as they watched. This was their real legacy, not the corporate success or the public acclaim, but these moments of genuine transformation. "Dad?" Tommy asked, straightening his tie. "Can I tell them about the new training program? The one for helping other kids become adaptive sports coaches?" "Of course, buddy. This is your story too." The board members filed in, no longer the intimidating corporate figures they'd once seemed. Many had become personally involved in foundation projects, their own perspectives transformed by what they'd witnessed. Wheeler took his seat, winking at Michael. "Ready to revolutionize adaptive sports, young man?" Michael's response was clear and confident. "Ready to revolutionize everything." Jack looked at his expanded proposal one last time before the presentation began. The numbers were impressive. Thousands helped, millions invested, dozens of programs launched. But the real measure of their success was in this room. Their children growing into leaders, their corporate allies becoming true believers, their simple act of kindness rippling out to touch countless lives. The proposal's title said, "It All, Building Bridges from One Meal to a Movement." The wall of thank you letters had become a landmark at the Foundation's headquarters, hundreds of them, from handwritten notes to children's drawings, each telling a story of lives transformed. Jack stood before them now, exactly 1 year after the Bridge Foundation's launch, reading a new edition that had arrived that morning. "Dear Mr. Morris and Ms. Chen, yesterday I watched my daughter graduate from medical school, something I never thought possible after my husband's cancer left us drowning in debt. But because of your medical debt forgiveness program, we found a bridge to a better future. Now she's going to work in pediatric rehabilitation, hoping to help children like Michael. Some bridges don't just cross divides, they build new paths." "Entirely reading the wall again?" Rebecca's voice came from behind him. She joined him, carrying a frame containing the original diner receipt, alongside Emma's first drawing of their blended family. "Just the newest ones," Jack smiled, "though I still read Sarah's favorite every morning." He gestured to a letter. From a young widow who'd found hope through their programs. The foundation's lobby buzzed with activity. Tommy was leading a training session for new adaptive sports coaches, his natural talent for teaching shining through. Emma's art therapy room down the hall echoed with children's laughter, and Michael was in the tech lab, working with designers on the next generation of adaptive equipment. Hard to believe it all started with $23, Rebecca mused, touching the framed receipt. And a mother testing humanity's kindness, Jack added, and a father who gave everything he had to help a stranger. Their reminiscing was interrupted by the arrival of visitors, families coming for the foundation's anniversary celebration. Among them was the diner's waitress who had served them that fateful day. She now ran their food security program, identifying struggling families and providing sustainable support. "The news crew is ready," Karen announced. "They want to do the interview in front of the letter wall." Jack and Rebecca exchanged looks. Press coverage had become part of their lives, but they'd learned to use it strategically, always focusing on the mission rather than themselves. "Should we get the kids?" Jack asked. "Already here, Dad?" Tommy called out. He arrived with Michael, both of them carrying what looked like blueprints for their latest adaptive sports innovation. Emma followed, her arms full of artwork from her morning therapy session. The reporter positioned them in front of the wall of letters, but before she could begin her questions, Michael spoke up. "Can I start?" he asked, his speech now fluid from months of growing confidence. "I want to tell them about the real story." The reporter nodded, intrigued. "Everyone thinks this story is about charity," Michael began, "about rich helping poor or strong helping weak. But it's not. It's about what happens when we stop seeing differences and start seeing people." Tommy jumped in. "It's about how teaching Michael baseball taught me more than any regular game ever could. It's about how art can help heal hearts," Emma added, holding up a painting from one of her young students. Jack felt Rebecca's hand slip into his as their children continued the interview, each speaking with passion about their part in the Foundation's mission. They weren't just recipients or providers of help anymore. They were bridge builders in their own right. The reporter turned to Jack and Rebecca. "Did you ever imagine it would grow into this?" Rebecca looked at Jack, then at their children, then at the wall of letters, each one a testimony to the power of human connection. "We imagined something better than success," she said. "We imagined change, real change, one story at a time. And that's what we got," Jack added, thinking of Sarah, of James, of all the people who had brought them to this moment. Not just changed circumstances, but changed hearts. Later, after the interview, their families gathered at their regular booth in the diner, the same booth where a simple act of kindness had started everything. Michael and Tommy were teaching another child their modified pitching technique. Emma was drawing with a young girl from her therapy group. The booth was crowded now, filled with the kind of family that life builds rather than blood. Jack looked at the newest thank you letter in his pocket, then at the growing wall of gratitude back at the Foundation, and finally at the faces around him, all of them connected by bridges built from compassion, understanding, and the simple truth that every person's story matters. "You know what Sarah would say about all this?" he asked Rebecca softly. She smiled, watching their children. "Change lives in their own unique ways. The same thing James would say." Together they finished the thought. "This is just the beginning."